All right, everyone, could I please ask you to take your seats? Okay, we're about to enter what always is one of my very favorite parts of this meeting. But first, I'd like to make another announcement, and if we could cue up the video, please. And we are formally releasing, as of today, the initial release, at least, of our latest portal, part of the Solar System Treks portal, in support of the Bepi Colombo mission, and this is Mercury Trek. So thank you to the Solar System Treks team for their hard work in putting this together. And this represents the latest member in a continuously growing family of Treks. Actually, Brian Day and Emily Law, if I could ask you guys to stand up. Brian is the program lead, and Emily is the project manager based at JPL for the Treks. They have done some wonderful work. Each of these Treks incorporates numerous different data sets and allows all sorts of advanced tools for analysis. We've retooled these since we inherited them at SSERVI so that they can be very useful for the science community and for future mission planning. So you can do flyovers, you can do all sorts of things, you can print 3D models. They really have some amazing capabilities, and we at SSERVI are very proud to be developing these and proving these on behalf of the entire community. So, so to Brian and Emily, thank you and congratulations on the latest release. Great. Okay, and now we'd like to go ahead with the awards. We're presenting 4 awards this morning, and we're starting with the Eugene Shoemaker Distinguished Scientist Medal. The 2019 Eugene Shoemaker Distinguished Scientist Medal, named after American geologist and one of the founders of planetary scientists, Eugene Shoemaker, who was born in 1928 and passed away in 1997, is awarded this year to the Honorable Harrison Schmitt, who we all know as Jack, for his significant contributions throughout the course of his career. The awards includes a certificate and a medal with the Shakespearean quote, "And he will make the face of heaven so fine that all the world will be in love with the night." Dr. Schmitt is an American geologist, a retired NASA astronaut, a university professor, and a former U.S. Senator from New Mexico. He received his doctorate in geology from Harvard University in 1964, and he was selected as one of the first group of scientist astronauts in 1965. He played a key role in training Apollo crews to be geologic observers both in lunar orbit and on the surface, and participated after each landed mission in examination and evaluation of the returned samples. As one of the Apollo 17 crew, he's the most recent living person to have walked on the moon and was the photographer who took the famed blue marble shot of Earth that we all know and love. He also remains the first and only professional scientist to have flown beyond low Earth orbit, a member of our community who has done this, and who had visited the moon. He resigned from NASA in August of 1975 in order to serve in the United States Senate, and served as the ranking member of the Science, Technology, and Space Subcommittee. He's since served as chair of the NASA Advisory Committee, in addition to his many other roles, and he wrote a book entitled Return to the Moon, Exploration, Enterprise, and Energy in the Human Settlement of Space in 2006. He's continued to maintain an active scientific career, particularly with his focus on helping a new generation of lunar scientists. And I continue to be impressed by his emphasis on inspiring young people. I think that it was very easy to see yesterday on board the Hornet, and he's very generous with his time and allowing people to do selfies with him, and just continuing to inspire all of us, very much including me. So Jack, welcome and congratulations.
Well, thank you so much, Greg, and we'll get that name spelled correctly one of these days. I'm particularly honored to be in this company. Can you imagine? What better company is there to be in? And also to have this award be in honor of Eugene Shoemaker. My connection to Gene began actually indirectly 2 different times in 1958. I just sitting there recall that Gene, I believe my memory's correct here, gave a paper on lunar stratigraphy at the International Geological Conference in 1958 in Copenhagen. Dave, you can probably correct me if I've got the dates wrong, but I believe that's right, because I was working in the field in Norway and did go down to that conference, but I missed Gene's paper because I was more interested in high-pressure metamorphics at the time than I was in anything else, and probably did not, and only later knew that he gave us the paper there. But late in 1958, I was still interested in eclogites, the high-pressure equivalent of basalt, and I was out in California to see some of the eclogites that exist in the Franciscan Formation out here, and stopped by to visit with Robert Coleman at Menlo Park USGS headquarters. And while we were talking about where I might find some of these large fragments of eclogite out in the Franciscan, he said, by the way, you need to go down the hall and meet Gene Shoemaker, who's doing weird stuff like mapping the moon. Well, I decided I'd go down the hall and meet Gene Shoemaker. And who else was down there but Danny Milton? Some of you may remember Danny, a really remarkable intellect, probably as close to a Darwin intellect as we've had in recent times. And Danny was a friend of mine from Caltech, and Noel Trask was there. It's, people I knew that really were top-notch intellects and scientists. I said, hey, this guy might be doing something that, if it interests Danny and Noel Trask, it'd probably be something we ought to look at. So I began to pay a little bit more attention to the moon. I had begun to pay attention to space activities because while I was in Norway, Sputnik was launched, and I saw its impact on the international student community that was there at the time. But in 1964, after I was finishing up a postdoc at Harvard, I needed a job. And it was one of those times when, in geological profession, when there was a bit of a recession and there didn't look like many opportunities. So I penned a letter to Gene, who I had found out indirectly that was establishing a new branch of astrogeology for the U.S. Geological Survey and Flagstaff. I asked him if he was hiring. Well, it turns out our letters crossed in the mail. He had sent me a letter having been looking at who took the civil service exam in geology. And so we got together out in Flagstaff, and within a month or so, NASA and the National Academy of Sciences put out an announcement of opportunity for scientists to join the astronaut program. And I thought about 10 seconds and said, well, that might be interesting, worth doing. I certainly would regret not applying if I had the opportunity. But I figured I had committed myself to Gene for some time, so I went to chat with him at his home, and he said, go for it. Many of you may know Gene wanted very much to be an astronaut. He was about 2 years over the age limit, and at the time also had been diagnosed in fact, it's while he was working at NASA headquarters, he was diagnosed with Addison's disease, and so he was living with a hydrocortisone pill every day. And so Gene wasn't going to be having that opportunity, but he very much encouraged me, and of course the rest is history. One of Gene's hopes, and I'll conclude with this, was that we would find a way to use the lunar regolith as a recording of the history of the sun and indeed the history of the solar system. And that was really the background for having core tubes, even on Apollo 11, was to try to get to where we could start to dig into that history. And only recently, I think we've started to figure out how to use the isotopic, stable isotope ratios within the cores of the moon in order to actually start to decipher that history. And some of you were probably at my Mazursky lecture at LPSC and see where I think that's going. There's a lot left to be done. But basically it turns out that the maturation processes on the lunar surface are changing those isotopic ratios, which gives you at least a relative time frame for understanding the history of the sun. And maybe, as we were listening yesterday, the possibility is that we can see some of within these deep cores, some of the effects of activities in the outer solar system as well. So maybe we're on the verge of honoring Gene and his intuition, which was really remarkable in many different fields. And we will begin to utilize the moon for understanding the solar system in general. Again, thank you so much for this honor and for allowing me to join this illustrious group. I really appreciate it very, very much. Thank you.
If you join us after, we're